Hey guys, I'm Ted Linzak, along with my wife, Rachel. We run Nuvo Images here in Charleston, South Carolina. We are a wedding and portrait photography studio that has been in business for about 13 years now. We focus on beautiful fashion-inspired wedding photography and beautiful art-focused portrait photography. So today I'm teaming up with Fstoppers to go over some of my favorite tips and tricks on album workflow and sales, being able to sell albums, present them to clients, create absolutely amazing designs that people will love and cherish for generations.
A big thanks to Saal-digital for helping to make this video possible. If you're in the market for an album, be sure to stay tuned for the deal they're offering or check it out in the description below.
So in today's climate, in today's industry, I find so many photographers that do not offer something like an album, something that's a tangible that people can cherish, that they can flip through. And I think so many people have focused on strictly offering digital products. They've forgotten the impact, and not only the impact on your clients, but the impact that album's gonna have on your bottom line and on your business. For us, after the fact, we generate on average about $1,800 to $2,200 in album side sales, so extra pages in that book. The incredible thing, guys, if you're making $80,000 or $90,000, whatever that amount is, imagine if you can add an additional 40 or 50 or 60%. So imagine, even at the smallest amount, I tell people, imagine $1,000. Say you do 40 weddings. Imagine an extra $1,000 at the end of each of those weddings. Imagine $40,000 extra dollars in your revenue stream at the end of the year. So when it comes to actually pricing albums, I think there's a lot of different schools of thought. Personally, we love to include those albums within our collections, but the bottom line is when you're looking at an album and you're trying to figure out what kind of price gets associated with that, rule of thumb for me is 25% cost of goods. So whatever that album costs to produce, you're marking it up at least 4 times. It's important to remember not only the actual cost of the album, but the labor that goes into it. So your time to retouch, your time to design, the time that goes to meeting with the client, all that needs to be quantified when you come up with that cost. Aside from that, we sell album sides and spreads as well. So you have to think of how much am I going to charge for an additional side or an additional spread, because that's a big part of this model. Again, that number could be fluid, but you have to remember album sides don't necessarily cost that much, but it's one of those things, again, looking at value-based pricing, there's a ton of perceived value in a spread in an album. So for us, that's anywhere between $300 to $400 a spread, meaning 2 sides, that's the price that we put on it for the client, and that's so crucial when it comes to actually upselling and making great profits on those sides after the fact. For a lot of you, $300 for an album spread may seem like a big number, but it's important to remember that we have to establish this value early on. So during that initial consultation, we want to show them beautiful, large albums to show them exactly what they're investing in. Whatever you want to sell, you have to show. That's kind of a bedrock sales principle. So whatever sizes, I always say not only the physical size, but if you want to sell big albums, meaning 50, 60, 80, 100 side books, you can't just show 20 side samples. Even if you can describe your product in amazing ways, it just can't compare with someone actually being able to pick this up, touch the beautiful covers, touch the pages. And the great thing is, as they're looking through it, again, I can add that value. I can tell them about the design process, how we lay things out, the reason why, personally we love simplistic designs. I can educate them on why it's better to stick with just white and neutral black backdrops, why it's important to have simple books that don't have a ton of images. Again, these are things that we believe in our design principles, but they also help, again, establish the footwork for the sale we're gonna make later on. If they just look at a book as just being pieces of paper bound together, even with a pretty cover, if that's all they think an album is, it's going to be hard to get them to invest in something like that. So I like using words like legacy products. I like getting them in the mindset of, again, moving away from analytical and moving into the emotional. So getting them in the mindset of not only the here and now, but imagine in 10 or 20 years, or even imagine after they're gone and future generations can have an incredible product like this, not only to be able to see the story of that day, but really to see the beginning of this family. Suddenly the idea of investing thousands of dollars after the fact on a beautiful book, a bigger book, it doesn't seem so ridiculous. It gets people in the right mindset, and that's so important when it comes to selling a product like this. Now, a lot of you may be wondering, how do we pitch or how do we sell these kinds of beautiful products to clients that maybe are out of state? Couple different ways. I think number one, you have to have great product shots of your products. I mean, that seems fairly obvious, but for us photographers, we have the means to be able to capture beautiful photographs of these books. So a lot of our clients are out of state. They live in different places. They come to this area just to get married. So sometimes a phone call can suffice, but a lot of those clients, they want to get deeper into what we offer. So being able to send them a gorgeous gallery, even if you have the means to take some video clips to show those albums, have have an assistant or have a friend, or even the great idea is to have past clients come in that have received their albums. Make short, sweet videos of them talking about their book, showing the album, showing the importance. Because again, you're not just selling the product, you have to sell the experience. So what's the experience of owning a beautiful album created by Nuvo Images or created by your studio? Being able to show past clients and the importance that this book brings into their lives is probably the best thing you can use to be able to sell that book to future clients. So regardless of if you're showing these products online or whether your clients are meeting in person, it's important to show everything you want to sell. There are so many different options for albums these days, from different covers to different boxes. Again, I love things that people can't just get anywhere. So acrylic covers like in this album right here, just really beautiful, clear, solid acrylic. The images almost have a glow to them when you look at those. I love the different boxes you can get. So we have beautiful linen boxes with linen wraps here. Again, you sell a beautiful album, it has to be placed in something incredible like this. And again, a lot of these album boxes can be upsell opportunities as well. So we can have a base box, or we can have something beautiful like this linen box, or we can upgrade to something even nicer like a full leather wrap box like this. Again, which is easy to sell because we want something to protect a book like this. So after we book this client and they've purchased a beautiful book that's going to be in their collection, how do we approach the wedding day? I always tell people beautiful album designs really rely on how you photograph the day, the mindset that you're in. If you're approaching a wedding and you're just thinking of getting a handful of great shots, that can be great, but if we don't have anything that pairs with that, it's going to be tough to design a book that's cohesive and has a beautiful storyline, meaning that we always have to shoot in image pairs and we always have to shoot with the album design in mind. So let me show you what I mean. So shooting for the album, when we have that mindset, we're getting ready to shoot, say, the bride and her details. Number one, in her hotel, in her suite, I want to look for consistent lighting. So that means that if there's beautiful window light, I want to think of not only shooting her details in that window light, but if I'm going to shoot her portraits, it's going to give me a cohesiveness, not only in the lighting, but in the color. There's nothing worse than having 3 or 4 images on a spread and you have really inconsistent white balances and inconsistent color. It also means, if I'm shooting the details, I may shoot them all vertically or I may shoot them all horizontally. Again, thinking of how they're going to lay out in the book. It's really important that you have those kinds of thoughts going on in your head, because if we're shooting, say, 20 different detail shots and we're just shooting horizontals and verticals, we're going all over the place, it can be really difficult when you sit down and want to kind of box those images out on a spread. It also means that as you go through the different portraits and say the family portraits, again, I want to keep the lighting consistent. I always want to shoot images in pairs. So I may shoot a beautiful image of this bride, or I may shoot a sequence of her getting ready with her mom and her sister, but if I only have the mentality of shooting one great image and then I move on to the next thing, it's going to be hard to pair that with something in the book. Moods being consistent, color being consistent, we always have to think of image pairs in an album. So after we've shot a beautiful wedding, we have the client there, they're ready to view their images after the fact. The next step is an album plan meeting. So this is the time after the wedding for the client to come in. We can present a pre-design to them. So that's a design that we've created that we feel showcases the entire day in the best possible way. They can see that in all its glory. They can see a slideshow of that. We can then actually take them through spread by spread and educate them on why we place what we place there. Again, it's so crucial to know that the client needs to be educated about the process. So they're aware that they're gonna see way more sides than what they've invested in. If they decide to say stick with 20 sides, they're gonna get a beautiful book, but this is an opportunity for them to invest more and get something that captures the entire day. Now, we do not retouch any images until we're totally finalized on the design itself. So you never want to do more work than you have to. But again, that goes to shooting in camera right, being able to create beautiful lighting and cropping in camera. Your images should look stellar right off the bat. So we go through any changes they want to do, and at that point, we can tally up how many extra sides they've ended up kind of with their final design. I think it's really important to do that process with the client because they feel invested in it. Naturally, if you were to spend an hour or 2 hours working on something, you feel an emotional attachment. Of course, the whole idea of doing this album plan shortly after the wedding is crucial too, because there is that emotional pull. You have a client that's only gotten married 2 weeks ago. This is the time where they're still going to be willing to make that investment. So time is of the essence. The timeline is incredibly important that happens not 4 months after the wedding, but within a few weeks. So having an incentive program is really crucial at this point too. So meaning that we may sell albums for $3 or album spreads for $300 a spread, But we'll let our client know that any pages that they commit to at this initial album plan meeting, they can get 5, 10, 15% off, whatever your pricing structure looks like. That's a great push for clients to not only invest in more sides, but you can also use that to push different upsells like beautiful linen album boxes, leather album boxes, different cover options like the acrylics. Say they have parents or relatives that want to get small albums. This is the time that you have a captive client and you can again reiterate all these different products, again, have them there to show them, and they can now make these decisions. Remember, the emotional appeal is strong. So many couples, they've received a lot of money and gifts. They're ready to spend. They want to spend if we educate them properly and we take them through that process. So number one, and I can't stress this enough, doing this process in person. Again, whether it's physically in person or through a GoToMeeting software, meaning that we want to avoid online galleries with albums. When I do a pre-design, I don't put anything online. There's no slideshows online or anything like that. And the reason for that is, number one, you want to control the process. You are the professional. You have to put your sales hat on and be able to walk people through, to educate them, not to oversell them, but to get them exactly what they need and let them understand and appreciate everything they're investing in. Number two, when you put things online and they view that album design online and every single day they view it, the emotional pool gets less and less and less and less, and they're less excited to be able to invest more. So the great thing about in person is when they come in, they're viewing that album design for the first time, and it's happening in front of me right before we go through the sales process. So now that you guys know the process of selling the albums, of being able to upsell albums after the fact, I want to take you guys through the steps and how do we actually design this book from start to finish. So we'll go through some design principles, we'll lay it out, and we'll show you how to be able to create something that your couples will not be able to resist. So we photographed this beautiful wedding. We have a lot of amazing images. When it's time to sit down and design this album, it's important to have a good grasp of the images we want to choose for a pre-design. So I've loaded in some of my favorites. So this bride in particular had a bridal session a few months before the wedding. That's just about 4 images that we pulled in. And we have a nice little selection of images from the day. So when we're shooting for an album, again, it's important to think of album spreads. We want different themes that go together. So you'll notice that as we kind of flip through all these images I've selected, we have some of these shots here where we've shot with a little candlelight in the hallway. Those go together. The first look shots were all done in one spot. As we go from location to location, I'm always not just creating one great image, but always something that pairs with it. So I can always have at least the left and right side. It's also important that on the back end, when we're doing this post-processing and all the editing and ordering and designing, we want to be able to see what the color is actually going to look like when it prints. One of the great things about Saal-digital's album design software is we can actually download ICC profiles and soft-proof our final design to be able to preview what the images are going to look like when we print them. If you want to go ahead and download these ICC profiles, you can do that at the link below. Or if you want to learn more about color management in general, you can check out some articles in their professional zone. So now that we have these images exported, they're high res, they're ready to go, we're going to open up Saal-digital's software. I'm going to load these images in, and I want to go through a little bit of the design principles that I use on every single album that I create. You have a few different options for some of the different products that Saal-digital offers. We're going to click on Photo Book, and we're going to order one of the Photo Book, their professional line. So really simple here, we're going to click Select on that. For today, I'm going to actually design a 12 by 12 album. So I'm going to click on this here. We're going to go with the acrylic leather. We're going to go with the leather black for the front leather area there. I'm going to go with the paper that's glossy. So they have a matte and a glossy paper. We're going to go with that. And the gift box, we will choose a leather black box for that. So once we have all those options picked, we can click Design. So it gives you a few different options here. Now you can use their auto layout feature, but I like to start with an empty template because it gives us some options. Number of pages, we're going to go ahead and design, I'm thinking this is going to be a 100-page book, so we're going to start with that. And now we're loaded up. Okay, so now that we have our images loaded up, we want to pick an image for the cover. So this is going to be an acrylic cover. I want to pick something that's going to stand out, maybe an image that didn't have something that was going to pair with it in the book itself. I had this nice image here of this couple underneath this arbor of trees here and some beautiful backlight. So I think I'm going to use this. I'm going to drag it up here. We're doing a 12 by 12 album, so it's going to be a square cover. So I want to resize this, and I basically want to make it a square. So we kind of just move these boxes here and just get it right here within that. Move this down a little bit. There we go. And then we can move our image around. So even though this was a 2 by 3 ratio, of course, I think it works pretty well as a square. So that's going to be our cover. I generally don't like to put words on a cover unless a couple wants it. I think it's a nice fashionable look just to have an image, so we're all set with that. Now, when we start an album, I'm a big believer that you start with the wows. Okay, so right here, there's a gorgeous image of them that we shot. Again, near these azaleas, a lot of beautiful color, just a simple, and these guys they had great laughing expressions, but I think they had a really fashionable, kind of serious, avant-garde kind of look as well too. So I think I want to start the book with this. So I'm going to make this a full spread. Again, I'm going to resize it here within the software. I'm going to move it just so it's about full spread. So you can see we see a left side and a right side. We're designing a 12 by 12 book. So I want to pay attention to the gutter too. Of course, I don't want anything to be in the way. I don't want eyes to be cut through with the gutter. I don't want the middle of a head to be cut through. That's not going to be an issue with this image because we photographed it in a way where we have negative space on the left. So we're going to add a text box. I clicked on that. We can pretty much add it anywhere here. I kind of like the fact that the couple in this image is more on the right side and their faces are on the upper right. So to balance that, I think it's nice to put the text in the bottom left there. So I tend to like a scripty font. So the black is getting lost a little bit. It's not horrible, but I'm thinking white might be a better font choice in terms of the color. So I'm going to click white. That's going to be a little bit better. Beautiful. First spread done. Really simple, but nice, beautiful, full bleed image. Beautiful way to start this album. So now as we go into the actual album, I like to start chronologically. So I think of what's the best way to start a book? Generally with the bride's coverage. So even if the groom, like in this situation, the groom actually got ready before the bride, I think generally with a wedding book, you want to see the bride first. So we'll start with that. Now this bride had about 4 images that I pulled from a bridal session she did a few months before the wedding. So I think we can incorporate some of those, but I want to start with some of her details. So I shot these vertically. So I have a couple of nice shots here, the earrings. I have the boots. She wore cowboy boots, which is kind of cool. I'm going to go ahead and just drag these on here. I'm not worried about exactly where they're going to be right now. I'm just going to move the images that I think are going to be great for this spread in particular. So I have the dress, I have the earrings, I have the boots. Those are all verticals, which are going to work really nice together. Then I also have this shot of, there's some shots of her doing the dress up on her own, but then she had a beautiful hairpiece. And we did a shot to kind of focus on that. So that's kind of like another detail, but it also has, a human element of her actually adjusting it. So I think these 3 are going to work really well. Now, in terms of my thought process here, I have 3 vertical detail shots. Those are going to block really well together. But then we have a shot of the hairpiece. Arguably, that's a hairpiece detail, but it features the bride. So I'm thinking that probably will be large, full bleed-ish on the right side, and then we'll inset the detail shots on the left. So anytime you make a spread, you try to think of, you have your supporting characters, and then you have your main character. You have your main actor and your supporting character. However terminology you want to use, you want there to be a flow. You want the eye to lock in on whatever is intended to be the focal point, and then everything else should support that to that end. So, that's why I'm, number 1, not a believer in over-cluttering albums. When you start to put 7, 8, 9 images on every spread, it becomes a proof book and not a beautiful art book that you can appreciate. And number 2, it begins to date the book too. I think a cluttered design it just doesn't have that longevity factor where it just doesn't have that art kind of feel. It doesn't have that editorial magazine feel. So you want to keep things really clear and concise. You want the eye to always have a logical point of view here. Generally, I like to put my feature images on the right-hand side of a spread. If you think of how we read a book, we read from top left to bottom right. We tend to linger on the right-hand side. So I don't do it all the time, but if I want emphasis on an image, the right side is usually where I go. So I'm thinking that's going to be really nice on this side, full bleed on the right-hand side, and these are going to be inset. So I'm going to go ahead and grab all these images together. I'm going to kind of get them to the size that I'm thinking is going to look good, just roughly. And I'm going to want to kind of get these in line as well. So I don't mind the gutter going through like something like the dress or the shoes. It doesn't really matter so much. It's more important when you have an eye or a head or something like that. We definitely don't want that to cut through someone's face. I got them about the size that I want them, but I want to make sure the spacing is going to be consistent in between the images too. That's really important. Once it prints, once you look at that final product, if this is a little bit more of a gap than that, it's going to look, it's not going to look professional. Again, remember, we're charging a premium for beautiful art products, so we have to make sure that that is all dialed in. So I can select all these images here. I can go to distribute spacing. Now, whatever spacing I want to use in between the images, I can actually put that into this dialog box here. I'm going to go with 0.2 of an inch. That's not super big, not super small, a little bit in between. I've clicked all these images. I can click distribute horizontally, and you'll notice how it actually equalized the spacing there. So now I can go ahead and I can move these around and get them just to where I need them. Notice how we have a consistent flow here with where the eye goes. So the most important images on that right side, we read from top left to bottom right. So we have our inset images here. The brain knows that they're smaller, so it knows that it's not the focal point. So we let that strip lead us over to the right side where we focus on that beautiful hairpiece. So really nice. So let's go to the next spread. So we have a lot of beautiful shots of her getting ready. Of course, we had the detail shots that we used. I quite like this image here of the back of the dress, and then we actually have a cool shot of her doing up the detail as well. The bottom line is, I'm thinking that this shot of the back of the dress of her doing it up, now that's a horizontal shot, but I'm thinking it probably could work well as a square. So I have a little bit of a border here, but maybe I want to go full bleed with this too. So the cool thing is here, I can quickly do that. I can actually make this full bleed. This is good full bleed, but maybe we inset this. So meaning I'm going to make this a little bit smaller, and I'm going to actually place this here and give a nice little border around. That's fairly consistent. Maybe we can make it a little bit larger. Touch. There we go. It's actually kind of like that now. And what we can even do is maybe make this a little bit larger. So we can go in here. We have some controls where we can zoom in, we can zoom out. So maybe rather than just going completely square, I can let this bleed over a little bit. And now we actually have just a little bit more of that detail on top. And again, our supporting image is going to be essentially this shot of Carly here showing off her profile and the hair and the back of the dress. And then we get some really nice detail with her, again, doing up the zipper a little bit. Again, my style is really fashionable, so a lot of these things I like to direct and I like to prompt clients. So, even though she may have not actually done this on her own, I made sure the lighting is correct. I've posed her hands in a way where the hands look really beautiful, and it creates this really nice editorial look that goes really beautifully together. So I think these two images, really beautiful spread there. What I like to do sometimes is to flip images in a design, basically to create my own symmetry, which is, it could be overwhelming if you do it a lot, but sometimes two simplistic images that are shot the same exact way, by flipping one image, you can create a cool effect. So there's two shots I have of Carly here that again are really similar crop. So I have one of her looking away, and then I have one of her looking at the camera. And they're fairly similar, same crops, but let me show you how we can kind of just spice this up in the course of an album design. So they're shot horizontally. I'm thinking I want to do a full bleed square on both of them. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and just move the boxes here. I'm gonna make these both squares, so they're gonna go full bleed. Now again, on their own, they're not bad images, really simple, really beautiful lighting, but they can be kind of boring just together like this. So how can we maybe change this up? I love shooting reflections in camera, I do that a lot, but can we create a reflection kind of look after the fact? Yeah, absolutely. So what we can do is I can take one of these images and I can actually flip it like that. And what we can do is two images that again were solid images, great lighting, good impact, but by flipping one, imagine opening up that album and opening up that spread and you get almost this mirror effect, which is just a really cool, fashionable way to create a spread. I wouldn't do this all the time. I think this effect works great maybe once or twice in a book. If you do it all the time, it becomes kind of sing-songy and it becomes, you lose the impact of this effect. So I have some really beautiful shots of Carly here with her parents. And again, guys, you'll notice without even the design in place how there's a story being told here, okay? Now it's all about how we lay it out. So in terms of the focal point, we have this sweet shot here. We kind of have this giggling shot here. I think this would be the focal point here. So I'm just gonna roughly lay this out. This image I think is gonna work really well as a square. So we're making a square album. So any image that can be cropped as a square, it's always gonna help us out. So I'm gonna move this here. You'll notice it works pretty well there. So, in terms of cropping, I have my own rules when I try to crop in camera when I'm photographing. Then when I crop, for an album design and moving these around, we have dad's ear. We may not want to maybe crop that in, but if I like, mom's a little bit more of the focal point here, like she's kind of giggling and dad's kind of part of it. So I may crop like just kind of in that area here. She's the focal point in terms of Carly, and then we have mom giggling. That works great as a square. Then we have two verticals and a horizontal on the left-hand side. So What we can do is we can drop 2 verticals on top of 1 horizontal, and that can work really nice. So it's really important now that I get this centered on the left-hand side of the spread. So I'm gonna select all the images. I'm gonna go ahead and line that, line center vertically, which is gonna get us that perfect center there. And then we can go in here and we can adjust the crop if we need to. So meaning that that's how the image was shot. That's actually looking pretty good. And then we have that bottom image there, and then we have this beautiful image here. So again, guys, shooting for the album, what does that mean? We have consistent color, we have a consistent mood. We have similar cropping in the sense that the background is similar and these are more tighter crops. But there's a clear flow though, right? We have a dominant image. The image on that right-hand side is our hero shot of this spread. We have our 3 images on the left being more of the supporting characters, but they all go to one end. There's one common theme, beautiful family shots, yet there's one dominant image that our eye rests on the right-hand side. So as we go through with the rest of the parts of this day, I'm gonna follow the same flow. Be classic, be simple, don't over-clutter. Make sure, again, that's what you show in your sample, so couples are seeing those simple designs when they come in. If they're seeing that, that's what they're gonna expect when you lay out their book. So hopefully all the tips I've shared today will help you add a ton more value into what you can offer your clients. Albums are one of these things that so many people leave on the table, and there's so much revenue to be added to your bottom line.
If you'd like to grab your own album from Saal-digital, check out the details in the link below to view the wide variety of photo books in their professional line. And if you get one, be sure to leave them some honest feedback about their products and services. They distribute these books from the US as well as Europe and their new Irish market, so be sure to click on the appropriate link depending on where you live.
If you guys want to learn more about photography, be sure to visit fstoppers.com. They add new content and material every single day. If you're looking to learn more about a specific genre of photography, check out their full tutorials available by visiting fstoppers.com/store.